I got a DM last week, and it was from a kid, and he told me he's going into his freshman year of high school. So he was saying, like, he asked me a couple other things, and then, he said, he was like, "Hey coach, so, I'm going into my freshman year, like, you said in your video that rankings are important, which I talked about in last week's podcast." And he was like, "Okay, so if rankings are important, like, what should I do to get exposure, to get noticed?" And you know, this kind of has a multifaceted response to it. Here's the thing: if you're in eighth, ninth, most of you in 10th grade, like, I'm just gonna tell you straight up, like, don't even worry about exposure now, okay? Most of you are not Mikey Williams, okay? Like most of you aren't. So most of you aren't going to have ESPN and all these major networks covering you when you're in eighth or ninth grade. This just won't happen. Very, 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 very few players have that, and it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. So the whole exposure thing, it's for what? Like, the main thing is, players will ask me, like, "Coach, how do I get recruited to play basketball?" Like, I don't want it to. It's not this simple, but it really is. Like, you have to be good. You have to be really, really good. Like, really, really good. If you aren't getting recruited, now there's some things that you can do additionally, but at the end of the day, if you're in eighth or ninth grade, like, you aren't good enough to play college basketball yet. Again, unless you're a top player. Okay, so when you're that young, when you're below your junior year of high school, or at least the summer going into your junior year of high school, so if you're still a sophomore or lower, your main focus should not be exposure or recruiting or anything like that. Like, just stop thinking about it. It's not important. Again, unless you are a top player in your class, right, where you're going to have D1 offers when you're in 7th or 8th grade, okay? Again, 99.9999% of players do not fall in that category, okay? So stop worrying about it. If you're below that age, your main focus should be development, okay? It should be getting really, really good, so that by the time you're a junior, right? Junior year is a very important year for recruiting. By the time you're a junior, you can contribute to your varsity team. You can be a main guy in your varsity team. You can play on a good AAU team, play good tournaments, and actually be in front of people who now actually care. Because here's the thing. I've said this in videos before, that you guys have probably, I had a whole it was a segment of a podcast where essentially I talked about the whole difference between, D1, D2, D3, my experience playing with guys at each level. And how a lot of those a lot of D3 guys that I know are better than some D1 guys I know. Like, and the thing is, for the majority of Division 3 programs, like, they're not going to recruit you before your junior year. Like, they're just not going to. It's different in D1. They might recruit you as a freshman, sophomore, some even earlier than that if you're a top player. But like I've said before, the majority, in most places, the best player on your team, the best player in your league, the best player in your conference is going to be a D3 guy. So that player isn't even going to really get recruited until he's a junior. Okay, so why worry about recruiting when you're a freshman? It doesn't really matter. Your goal needs to be to become that guy. Like, I need to become the guy who's the best player on my team, who's the best player in my conference. Like, that's got to be what you're actually looking to do. It shouldn't be about, oh, I gotta get exposure, I gotta do all this and that, and like, that's just, it's not important. Like, I think the focus for players is not where it needs to be in terms of that. Like, I get it, because that was me. But I learned to recognize that, like, you got to actually get good enough to be there, because a coach is going to look, and when he evaluates you, he's going to ask himself, is this kid going to be able to contribute to my team, right? And like I've said before, a lot of these, even if it's D3, a lot of these D3 guys are incredibly good. Again, I mentioned it before. You go watch Devontae Friga, right? Like, that's a D3 guy, and he is if you play with him, he's probably one of the best players you're ever going to play with, right? So you need to look at that. Like, think about that yourself. If a guy like that is, and again, I know this for I don't know this for sure, but like, you'd assume probably not before his junior year is really when he started to get that sort of traction, at least with the program he ended up going to. So end of the day, the exposure piece, forget about that for now. Okay, get to a point where you can actually see yourself contributing to a college roster. Okay, this shouldn't be about, like, oh, I want to play. No, it needs to be like, are you good enough to do that? Be honest with yourself. Ask yourself that. If you aren't, then then figure out why that is and work on it. Okay. Once you get to your junior year of high school, okay, going into your junior year, this is when you can start to be proactive. So, for example, and I'm gonna dive into this at some point in more detail. Probably give you guys like something like some sort of template or something that you can use. But you're gonna want to reach out to coaches, okay? Because here's the thing. Again, if you're not a top player, if you're not a if you're not a D1 guy, teams are not gonna reach out to you for the most part. They might reach out to you, but you're gonna have to reach out to a lot of schools, especially if you're interested in them. So if you want to go to this school, it's a good chance they probably won't reach out to you. You're gonna have to be the one to email their coach, say, hey coach, my name is Mark. I go to this high school and I graduated this year. Here's my highlights. This is my stats from last year. I'm interested in playing at your school. And essentially that's what you're gonna say. So you're gonna do that for the schools you're interested in, and at that point, if they think, again, if the coach looks at you, looks at your highlights or looks at your game film, says, hey, this kid might have the potential to contribute to our team in a couple of years, they'll be interested in you. If they don't think that, then they won't be. So again, you need to put yourself in the best position to actually get there. Okay, stop trying to get to the finish line before you even start the race. Right? If you're at 8th or 9th grade, you haven't even started. Like, you're not even close to where you need to be. Okay, so stop worrying about the finish line. Start focusing on actually sprinting and getting into first place, right? Worry about actually doing it before you actually worry about finishing it. That's a big thing I think that players need to understand, is that it's not just about I got to get exposure. This kid is, Mikey Williams is getting this and that. It's like, stop. Again, that's my issue with Ball's life and overtime, is like, stop worrying about what's happening on overtime. It has no effect on you. Again, those players on there are most of them are the very, very top of the basketball of each class, right? So they're going to get the attention, they're going to get the quote unquote exposure, and they're going to get the offers early because they're better than everybody else is. Okay, so you can't worry about that right now. That doesn't affect you. You got to get yourself to a position to where you actually can contribute and schools are actually interested in you. Okay, because if you just are like, oh, I'm gonna get exposure, that's the other thing too. Like, you gotta think about these camps too. A lot of camps are gonna be like, oh, exposure camps or whatever, right? But if you aren't good enough, like if you aren't that good, what's your exposure gonna do? It's gonna really be a waste of your time and money potentially, when you could be spending that time and money in a better place. And then by the time you're a junior, senior, you gotta worry about that stuff, and you can go to those camps, right? Because you're good enough, you put the work in for it now, and you know that teams are gonna be interested in you. Okay, so take it step by step, get there first, get good enough first, then worry about actually being, reaching out and putting yourself in a position to have opportunities for yourself. I want you guys right now, go to the top link in my description and get my free Elite Perimeter Scorer workout. We're going to work on a bunch of different skills that you need to have if you want to be an elite player in the perimeter. Make sure you guys check it out, completely free. Click the link, I'll send it right to you.